Hi guys, this is part one of your contemporary issues in sport revision. The first part of that is the participation section that makes up LO1. It covers everything from user groups to barriers to participation, and then finally goes on to some current trends within sport. The first two we're going to look at today are retired people and children, and we're going to group these generally as age. So in terms of retired people, we tend to have these stereotypes in our head that retired people only participate in elderly sports such as bowls, for example, which obviously this isn't the case. There's a wide variety now of sports available for people that have adaptations to potentially have reduced impact on their joints that continue to make people healthy. In terms of children, there's obviously restrictions to different sports for children to participate. And the main thing with this as well is cost can inhibit participation. So if you're a child who wants to get into golf, for example, it could be £200 for a membership. The clubs might cost £300, which obviously that level of cost is going to inhibit your availability to participate in that sport. The second one we're going to look at is disabled people. So as a user group, there are a large amount of disabled people who do access sport, but in terms of barriers to participation for those guys, lack of access and provision is one of the main ones. So if you have a physical disability, can you actually access the sport? If it's a swimming pool, is there a ramp that allows you to get into the swimming pool in terms of the building, or is there a hoist that can get you into the pool? The next one is provision. So provision is sort of the planning of the activities. Is there a time potentially where disabled people could access the pool themselves so that they can boost their confidence a little bit? We also have a lack of suitable clubs for disabled people. So in terms of teams, just off the top of my head, blind football, for example, and do you know where your local blind football club is? And sometimes with that, it sort of goes hand in hand, is there's a lack of funding for disabled sports. So we need a little bit of money to get them off the ground and obviously attract participants, and then it sort of snowballs from there. So if we don't have the funding to start with, we might struggle a little bit to attract people. And then one of the last barriers to participation for disabled people, discrimination. So worrying that people might discriminate against them, that they might not want them at the club, and that can deter people from taking part in sport. The next user group is ethnic minorities, and this is a group within a community that have a different national or cultural traditions from the main population. So in the UK, for example, Asians would be an ethnic minority. In terms of barriers to participation, cultural influence on that sport or on participation in sport is quite a big issue. So is it culturally acceptable for certain people within an ethnic minority group potentially to be taking part in exercise? Another barrier within this is lack of role models. So frequently there's a lack of ethnic diversity within television and the media, which has an impact on the people wanting to participate in sport. A final barrier might be females being inhibited by their religion. So if you were a Jewish female, for example, that might prevent you from taking part in some group exercise sessions due to the clothes that you might have to wear and the sort of cultural association with that. The next user group is unemployed, and a new sort of term here is socio-economic, which involves sort of the background of that person and the money that they have coming in. So if you're from a low socio-economic family, you might not have a lot of disposable income, you might not have a lot of money. And unfortunately, in terms of barriers, this means that the cost of sport for unemployed or low socio-economic groups can actually mean that they're disadvantaged in terms of taking part. The cost of equipment, the cost of transport, this can all add up, and due to a lack of disposable income, which is income after you've paid all your bills, due to a lack of disposable income, this can inhibit the participation, which means that we have fewer people from low socioeconomic groups participating in certain sports that have a high cost basis. The next one's families with young children. Families with young children have a lot of costs that incur just in daily life, so additional costs for childcare can mean that sport becomes inaccessible. So if you have to pay someone to look after your child so you can go to the gym or you can go to a fitness class, then that might reduce your chances of going because it becomes too costly. If you were to take your child to one of these classes, are there suitable activities to take your children? So things like parent and toddler classes, for example, parent and toddler swimming classes, you can take your child to that. it might be less suitable to take your child to the gym because they have age restrictions in the gym, and this means that you might have to get someone to look after them instead. And then finally, balancing work-family commitments. So if you work all day and then you want to spend some time with your family at night, it can be difficult to free up some time to go and sort of participate in some exercise. And people find it very difficult to find that balance between work and family. The next user group's working singles. So if you're a single parent, again, the cost of childcare goes up a lot because you don't have a partner who can sort of look after that child. And again, you have to find suitable activities to take your child. So finding something where it's appropriate to take your child with you can be difficult. The next user group is working singles or couples. So if you're a working single, they often find it difficult to find time after work to sort of motivate themselves to go to the gym or to find a suitable time to get to the gym or get to a fitness class or participate in a league for football, for example. They might also have some issues with disposable income. So one income in a household can often get a lot of it get spent on bills and spent on the house. So finding that money to pay for sport and recreation can often be difficult. And then sometimes you don't know what's on. So if you're an individual and you want to go to a sport class or go to something at the weekend, finding out what's going on, so lack of awareness of provision. And then finally, gender issues. If you're a female, for example, there are a large lack of role models in the media. So growing up, you might not know that many famous female athletes, and there's a big push at the minute of trying to get people on the television that are female to encourage young girls to get into sport and to put female sport on the television. For example, netball, there's been some coverage on. At Wimbledon every year, we have a lot of female tennis players, and it's all a big push to try and get females into sport. We're going to have a little bit look now at barriers to participation. So in terms of barriers to participation, there's a few that we're looking at, and we're going to focus in here on 6. Within your revision guides, there are a few more, but these are the sort of main ones. The first one is media coverage. So we talked before that males get more media coverage than females, and this is a big issue in terms of getting females into sport. So are there people on the television that they can look up to, that they want to be like, and then they get themselves down to the local sports club to try and emulate that, to try and copy them, to try and get into sport, and then the cycle repeats. So we have to try and get more females on the television or in the newspapers or on Instagram doing sport. And there's big campaigns such as This Girl Can that try and encourage girls to get into sport through social media. The next thing in terms of media coverage is popular sports such as football, rugby and horse racing get a lot of media coverage, which means they're exposing themselves to more people, and then more people watch it and more people get interested in it. So some of these sports that aren't on the television, for example netball, maybe struggle to get people into it because not as many people are seeing it, not as many people become interested in that sport. So again, it's about trying to distribute the time so evenly. One of the next big barriers of participation is discrimination. So this is people who are actively discriminating against certain user groups, and this might be because of age, race, ethnicity, gender, disability or social class. And this discourages people from getting involved in sport because they're afraid of what people might say, or that people might not want them there, or they might not fit in. And this can be quite a big thing in it, like I say, a range of different user groups, and it's definitely something that we have to be aware of. If you're planning sports sessions, are they accessible to everyone? Can we make sure they're accessible to everyone? A lack of role models is a big one. So children want to copy role models. So if we don't have a lot of role models for Asian footballers, for example, or female role models, then we have less people wanting to copy them and less people getting into sport. So the more we have a really wide range of role models on the television, then the more participation we have in sport. And there's a big push in this at the minute to get that in the media. Disposable income, so unemployed or economically disadvantaged have less disposable cash to participate in sport, and this is really important for sports that cost a lot of money. For example, swimming could be upwards of £3, £4 a session. So if you're trying to get into swimming and you're trying to be active through swimming, that cost of that can quickly add up, and it can eat away at your disposable income, which discourages people to take part in sport. And then finally, opportunities and access. So provision for the local area affects participation.
If you live near a leisure centre, or you have a good 3G, for example, like at Cramlington, that's busy every single night due to people having bookings for football teams or private bookings where people can come and just play a seven-a-side match with their friends, and that encourages participation. If the AstroTurf at Cramlington had big holes in it and it wasn't very good, or it was an older generation Astro where it's sort of like a carpet with sand on, fewer people are likely to take part, and that therefore participation goes down. So if you have good facilities in your local area, you're far more likely to take part. The flip side of that is if you have no facilities for that at all, you find it impossible to take part. So if there's not a ice rink in your area, you're not going to be able to get into ice hockey, for example, or figure skating without travelling a large distance, which again is going to put you off the sport. If you've got to travel 2 hours every time you want to go and train, you're far less likely to take part.